intuitively simple component that they all share, which is love. Trusting in what makes someone great, outside of your expectations of them. Virginia's unwavering support in her son is the reason that Dave was able to make the music that changed all of our lives. She loved her son enough to trust him to go tour with Scream, and then to audition for Nirvana, and then when he wanted to do his own little thing, right? This book is a roadmap for loving parenting. And with that, can you guys just do something for me? I'm going to ask Dave and Virginia to come out, but I think she deserves to feel the feeling that Dave feels every time he comes on stage. I'd like to do a little chant, and it would go like this. Virginia! 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 Please help me welcome Dave Grohl and Virginia Grohl to the Black Cats.
This is so unbelievable.
That's pretty incredible. Oh boy. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Here, I want to get a lot.
Got it.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming tonight. This is my mother, Virginia. If you've ever met before. I'd like to begin by saying, Mom, welcome home.
Hi.
This is the
So great. You know, this just really reminds me of when I was teaching at Fairfax High School. I went to a show over a vacation or something, and I came back to my classroom, and it was AP seniors. I hope some of you are out there. Oh, you smart people. And I said to them, you know what? I've been coming into these classrooms for 30-some years, and some of you write me a note at the end of the year, and some of your parents come and say, thank you so much, and so on. But I just came back from a rock show, and I realized I never got a roar. Well, I just got my roar.
You got your roar.
Yeah.
That's a big one. How's it feel?
I love it.
You can see why I dropped out of high school,
See
can't
why
you?
you do this, right?
Yeah. Okay, so as you're all well aware, I'm sure, my mother's written this book, and it's brilliant, and it's insightful, and it's funny, and when I read this book, it just reads like an email that she would have written me. I hear it in her voice. It's like, oh, David. And then a wonderful chapter about Dr. Dre's mother or whatever. So I'm supposed to fucking interview my mom, which is bizarre. We've done a few of these, and I don't know what to do really. The first one we did, they said, okay, we're gonna need you to talk for about 45 minutes. And I said, okay, well, we've been talking for 48 years, so I think we could probably handle it. But each one, I'm totally unprepared as usual. But since we're here, I'd like to ask you about Fairfax County. And moving to the DC area and becoming a teacher here. We moved here in 1973?
Something like that.
Something like that. And did you immediately start teaching, or?
Well, they don't welcome you instantly. You have to You have to go through the trials of being, at that time, a substitute teacher. So they put you, they make you go to a junior high, is what they do. And
The trenches.
if you survive that, they'll give you an interview. And so there was a year or two of that. And then, I saw this really good friend of mine that in New York the other day, and she's mentioned in the book, Kathleen Goldpaw, who was, so while I'm in this junior high, I heard about something going on in a high school, and it was a drama production, and I think it was Godspell. And I thought, I'll go see that. And anyway, I saw that in another production, and I thought, I want to teach in that school. I want to be, in that creative space. And
That's my mom. Very passionate.
So I got there, and that was the last creative space I was in, actually. And that didn't last so long. They turned it into School for Science and Technology.
Right.
And
I like to tell people when they ask, what high school did you go to? I say, Thomas Jefferson. They're like, wow, you must be smart. And I'm like, no, it was before that.
yeah, I think it's the #1 school in the country now. Did you know that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that the reason why I like to tell everyone that my mother was a public school teacher for 35 years is because... Right. It's because of that, basically. Yeah. Because public school teachers are, everyone's Joan of Arc, and they're all heroes, and, it's amazing. But how on earth could a public school teacher have a child like this? How does that work? I mean, I know the answer to that question.
I hope you figured it out, right.
But I think that one of the reason why the book is so important is because it's written from that perspective. All of the mothers had to raise kids that were maybe focusing their energy towards music or the arts more so than academics, and there were these mothers that were there to support them,
right.
Realizing that, talk about that. How does that work?
It was tough, and we talked about it a lot because, I was meeting women. We talked about how we thought we were a special sorority. We'd never met each other before, and we just instantly bonded because we understood the lives we had led, and we had the same problems and the same situations, and a big one was school. School was a major problem for all of our sons and daughters, and therefore for us. So we fought a battle for a long time, differently. Some were really insistent and angry and didn't want to lose. And some of us along the way discovered that we were on the other side. And we had very different experiences, but we all found that the schools don't address the needs of the creative kids. So, yeah. Not the ones we knew, not the schools we saw. And some of the people did research and tried school after school after school, and nothing was going to work. So we had that problem, and we still have that problem. And I'm retired. I'm not. I can't figure it out, but I hope somebody will. And yeah, so maybe there's somebody out there that has an idea or a child that is having the same kind of battle, and will go forward in the fight. So I hope it'll change. And I have grandkids now, and he has little kids in school who are going to have problems. We all do.
Can I just send them to your house, Mom? Because you don't want my fucking advice. Not at all.
I think they do, actually. I think you understand a lot about what works with the the creative spirit.
Well, I had a wonderful example to follow
Thank you
after
very
that,
much.
didn't I? I knew there was hope when I was maybe about 14 or 15 years old, when my mother and I were sitting at the dinner table, and she said, "Do you know," I can't say his name because we're at home right now. She said, "Do you know blah, blah, blah?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "I think he's a genius. He's in my class, and he's the most brilliant writer of all of my students."
He's probably.
And I didn't have the heart to tell her that he was my acid dealer. I think I just told you that the other night in New York. I don't know if you knew that before. But I was like, oh my God, I have a chance.
And there's another book, actually.
Yeah, that's a whole other. That's
And the
that's
things
the
that are
sequel.
still coming out, what I'm still learning, yeah.
Yeah.
You never know the whole story.
But I mean, honestly, I think that and I've always thought this, even way before you decided to write the book, was that the reason why why I'm here doing what I do today is because you spent 35 years teaching kids and getting to know them and realizing that every kid is not the same and that there's a path outside of the conventional
I hope so.
school story. I think it's true.
Are any of my old students out here? No?
Wow, that's weird because there's always one at the back door of my gig.
Yeah. I know. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I could be in fucking Thailand and someone's like, your mom was my public speaking teacher. It's true. They're everywhere.
Yeah.
There was another teacher, the Haim sisters,
Yeah.
the girls in the band.
Right.
Their mother was a teacher as
Right.
well. How did she deal with her kids?
Well, they were the luckiest ones in the whole group. They got into an elementary school, actually it's the one your wife went to, where they had a really good music program.
Wow, really?
And yeah,
didn't know
it's
that.
right around the corner from my house, actually. And they were,
What, Buckley?
no, it's Dixie Canyon.
Oh, that, right.
And they paid attention to that kind of thing.
Huh.
And every year they tried to get every kid in the school to be involved in some kind of a show. And then her kids went to the LA School for the Arts. So that's a very elite school. It's very difficult to go through the process to get into it. But once you're in and committed to it, then it's a really good school.
Right.
But only a few people can go there. I think they only accept 50 kids a year from the entire city of Los Angeles, which is, I think, the second biggest system in the country. So it's only a few who get that, and the rest get whatever the local area has going on at the time, which is pretty random. So it's not good.
And she was an art teacher.
Yes, she was an art teacher as well, yeah.
Right.
So several of the mothers were involved in education to some degree, and she was one, yeah.
Another thing that seems like a common thread that runs through the book, there's a lot of single mothers.
Yes, yes. A lot of us did it on our own. Some of us, Adam Levine's mom and I talked about how we really thought that was, in some ways, a better deal because we didn't have to justify decisions we made. It was, this is what we're going to do. Son would say, Mom, will you take me to this, and can I do this? And we'd say, sure, don't worry about it. And we didn't have to then figure out how to debate why we were right. That was done. Yeah, so. And several were widowed at young ages and shocked by that, and then it was really difficult. Geddy Lee's mom was
Geddy
one of
Lee
those.
is the bass player of Rush. Just so for those of you cool kids.
Yeah. He probably had to go through more resistance from a parent than almost anybody else. His poor mom put up an admirable fight, but
She wanted him to. What did she want him to do?
do big things, go big places. She had grown up in a Nazi concentration camp. So she had her education robbed from her. She and her husband came to Canada with nothing. They had no money, they had no prospects for a future, they didn't speak the language. They started from nothing and built a life. So then he comes on the scene, and he's a really smart kid, and he's doing well in school, and he's in advanced classes, and son going to be a doctor. And all of a sudden, his principal and counselor call Mary in for a conference, and they say, I've never heard of this happening, ever, we think he should leave school. He can't do both. They'd worked to help his scheduling and so he could play music and do school successfully, and they said he can't do both. It's one or the other, and we think he's going to make it. So we say, you have to let him go. Can you imagine?
Amazing.
And she was stricken. Although they both have different views of this. He says, she didn't speak to me for weeks. She says, I went to one of his shows and they were right. So I'm not sure what the truth is.
And how old was he at the time?
He was a high school senior.
That's a little late.
He was close to graduation.
It's true.
Yes.
Well, here's the thing, is one of the things that you learned in the book is that
Right.
there is this sort of golden age of discovery,
Right.
which is what?
12 to 13.
And that at that age,
Early.
a lot of kids get the bug and decide that this is where all of my energy and passion and
Yeah.
focus is going, right?
They don't just decide, they decide. Yeah. The conversation over. That's what I'm doing.
Why do you think that is?
I think because it's beyond any other kind of passion or intense desire or interest. You're overtaken by something. I don't understand it. I think there will be a science in the future, 20, 50 years from now, that will be music. There will be music neurologists who study something in the brain, in that portion of the brain where the music thing hits, because I know it's there. I don't know what it is. I don't know the science. But there's something going on there that doesn't happen in most people, but it's happened in all of you guys, and it's powerful. So it's something that all of them had said and did and felt, and the mothers either recognized it or tried not to for a while.
Right.
But it was all that.
Don't you think some of it comes down to DNA?
Oh, I think it's all there, yeah. It's not because the mothers gave you nice music lessons, because they didn't want the music lessons. Most of them went to one or two and said, I'm not doing this. I don't like it. I don't want to take the drum lesson.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, I didn't force, I got this really cool jazz drummer at one step down to come over and give you drum lessons.
Yeah, but he was charging $30 an hour, and the first thing he said was, you know you're holding your sticks backwards, right? And I thought, after an hour, I could never afford. I'd have to mow 1,000 lawns a week to learn how to play the drums. Well, this is funny because...
And he still holds the drums wrong, the sticks wrong, by the way.
I do.
But it's okay.
It's worked out okay. So... this is another great thing about growing up with Miss Virginia Hanlon Grohl was that when she was young, she was in vocal groups, so she sang. We ain't singing no song. So there was always music in the house, and there was diversity. There's a wide range of stuff. So there was classical. My father was a classically trained flautist, so he was really into classical. My mother was into show tunes and Manhattan Transfer.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
The good stuff.
The chess soundtrack was huge at the Grohl residence. Which I still can't get out of my fucking head. That's a One Night in Bangkok song. It's just like, drives me insane. But we used to, on Sundays, go down to this place called One Step Down, which was a jazz club outside of Georgetown, which is a fucking subway
So
now.
great.
What is it?
I don't know. It was so wonderful.
But they had this jazz workshop where every Sunday they had a house band. A man named Lawrence Wheatley played piano. The drummer was Lenny Robinson. And at the time, I had discovered the punk rock scene here in Washington, D.C., so I was just all about the crazy, the noise and the punk rock and the local bands. But my mother would take me to see jazz. And I honestly feel like that opened up so much more to me that I never would have experienced otherwise. So someone like, you've talked about Dr. Dre before, how he was exposed to a lot of different kinds of music. And was his mother a musician?
Well, she was in a girl group too.
Was she really?
Yeah, she was. And so she sang a little bit, and she was obsessed with music. There was music playing all the time in their house. So he says to this day, it's 70s music that gets him going. That's what he goes back to, yeah. And of course, he's used every bit of every piece of music he's ever heard. And he has that same ear, that same kind of thing that nobody can explain. And she didn't want to know about it for a long time either. But yeah, so there was constant music in the family and in the house. And she said when he was a baby, he couldn't sleep if it was quiet. There had to be music playing.
Wow.
There had to be something going on, yeah. So, yeah, I think we had music around a lot. I don't have any idea what affected you or broke through into your brain. Certainly you never played chess after that, I noticed. But you talk about it a lot.
It all started with One Night in Bangkok. I feel like you can hear that in our music.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm looking for it. I've been looking for it.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, but it was great, and I thought this area was particularly terrific because we could go. I mean, One Step Down was just magical. I love that place because musicians were coming into town to play gigs someplace, and then Sunday afternoon they were headed home probably, and they'd stop by, and whatever instrument they had in their hands, you were going to hear. So you never knew what you were going to hear, and you never knew what the mix would be, and occasionally it wasn't great, but most of the time it really was good, and it was one of those places. And then there was Wolf Trap, where we went to hear, the Four Tops and the Temptations, another big favorite thing of mine. And he went with me to that stuff too. And I don't know, you seem to be having a good time. So, and we saw, he was such a nice kid. Okay, Mom. Yeah. You can
I
hear
hated those fucking crepes you made. I'm just saying, it's time for us to have a real talk.
Yeah,
They stank up the house. I didn't like them. No, I did, and I mean, I feel like it's important now as a parent. I also feel like it's important to share as much music with my kids as I can, and to let them hear the Beatles,
Right.
and then let them hear, let them listen to. I mean, this is one of the other great things about my mother is she never told me not to listen to something. So when I was listening to, satanic death metal, my mom was cool with that. Which was great, because I think another thing that I wonder about, how much, especially at that age, at 12 to 13, I mean, that seems like a really crucial formative time
it is,
where
yeah.
kids are discovering identity. And it's important for a parent to realize that, right?
I think so. I mean, I think, and first of all, just realize that that is a crucial time.
Right.
And it comes on you. It's surprising, because you know how fast things happen when you're a dad, and all of a sudden the 2-year-old is almost as tall as you are, and
Yeah.
she's 11, and she knows more math than you do. Yeah.
I can't do the homework
That
anymore.
happened really early.
Not even close.
Right.
No.
So things happen fast, and you and you have to know how you're going to maneuver through that time, and
Right.
and that time is crucial, I think, to understanding that.
I'm lucky because I have such a good example to fall back on when my daughter, as she did a month and a half ago, say, "Dad, I think I want to shave my head." And I'm like, "Really? I thought you were growing your hair out." And she said, "Well, I was, but all the other girls in my class have long hair, and I'm different from them, so I think I want to shave my head." And I was like, "Can I shave it?" Because I love you more than I ever have in my entire life right now. Oh my God. The apple in the tree. Holy moly.
Yeah.
Here's a question that I haven't asked you in front of 800 people before. What did I do that really pissed you off? You've had a scotch, I've had a beer. Let's get down to this right now.
That's right. When I would ask you a question, like, David, did you finish writing this thing, your assignment? And your answer would be, sort of. He didn't want to lie. And
That was probably a lie.
right, I think so too. I wanted to call you on that for years.
Sorry, Mom.
Okay. The thing is, you were really fun. Yeah, you didn't make me angry. Let's
Come to
see
think
now.
of it,
Right.
maybe you did.
Well, I don't know. Maybe the stuff you had painted on your walls in your room, but I just stayed out
Right.
of there after a while. I just didn't even look.
That was off limits.
Yeah.
When I was young, I was in a band when I was about 16 years old. We were called Dane Bramage. And
There's a
and
great name.
we had the shittiest name ever, but we were pretty good. I thought that we were kind of cool. But at the time, and this goes back to my mom never telling me what to listen to or what not to listen to. I was listening to it was like psychic television, and I had these records where it was like Jim Jones in this ear and Charlie Manson in this ear, and and then I'd go buy acid and do the whole thing. Anyway, kids, don't do drugs.
Oh, and there was that. Yeah.
Right. And so we were playing a show, and I thought, oh, wow, what would be really weird is if I painted a backdrop for our show that was a picture of Jim Jones. Like, wow, how weird, man. So I went to the closet, and I got this bed sheet, and I nailed it on the wall, and I kind of like graphed the thing and then grafted on the deal, and I painted this Jim Jones thing in black paint, and then I waited for it to dry, and I came back a couple hours later to take it down, and I got the sheet and I went and the paint had bled through.
This wall.
So my entire teenage years in Springfield, Virginia, I had a huge mural of Jim Jones above my bed.
And that's why I never went in that room.
Exactly. Yeah. One of, and we've covered a little bit of this, but there's something in the book that my mother calls the conversation.
Yeah.
Which was the time we sat down at the table in the living room and talked about to finish school or to not finish school.
Right.
And I had this opportunity to go travel the world with Scream and go on tour and play music and experience all of this wonderful stuff, which, why did you let me go?
Well, exactly. That's why.
First of all, we never fucking expected this to happen, okay? This was not in the cards.
Yeah, that wasn't part of the discussion. But you were 17. You'd been in school for quite a few years, and so far the magic had not happened. And at that time, I was teaching in the same school where my son and daughter were going. So we went off to school in the same car every morning, and I knew what was going on in school because I knew all his teachers. He was right down the hall, and they'd come to talk to me and say, "Here's what happened today." Nothing. And so when he had this opportunity, and I knew the Scream group, and I'd gone to a lot of the shows. I had no idea what they were saying, but I loved the intensity and the excitement and the way they engaged the audience and so on. And a lot of the other things that were attached to it. The positive force movement was going on at the time, and there was a lot of good things attached to it. And so I thought it was a really good move in the right direction, and that he was going to be, okay, he's going to be in a band. They're going to be paid some money for playing, and they're doing it in Paris. So, and I'm stuck in Fairfax County. So yes, I thought it was a great idea. And, the other thing, when we talked about that, and he talked about going on as a musician and making a life in that, at those times, and I found this with many of the other mothers too, there was never a discussion of, I'm going to be a rock star, never heard that, and never I'm going to be rich and famous. That was never part of it. I'm going to play music. I'm going to be a musician. That was it, pure and simple. So, by that time, I think it was easy to agree. I honestly didn't have people that I taught with thought I was out of my mind, but it seemed so right. It worked out well, didn't it? Yeah. So that was that.
Thanks, Mom. I have one more question before we start taking questions.
Okay.
The last chapter is my favorite. It's called What's a Mother to Do? I know you probably feel weird about giving advice to a nightclub
really
full
do.
of people.
I know.
But
or any group of people.
I think you're very well qualified to
Thank you.
give people some sort of impart a little wisdom and give a little bit of advice. I think that you're maybe more qualified than most. Only, I mean, I can't say that either. But
Well, I'm 3 times older than anybody here, so that, there's that. But, yeah.
If you've got 4 minutes
Oh, boy.
to
To tell them what's a mother to do?
tell some of these people that might be in the same predicament,
Yeah.
give them a little something.
Well, I know a lot of you probably are parents of kids who are showing artistic tendencies or any kind of strong, determined passions for something at that age, easing into 12, 13, and then going forward from there. And I think that you need to be at ease with that at some point. That's what's happening, and so you're going to have to deal with it. And you hope you have a good relationship going on at that point. You've got to start earlier, right? Of course. But I think we were able, because we had a good relationship from early on. We could really talk, and I think that real talking and about real things and trivial stuff, and then really big things and everything that's going on, because that's important. You need to know what the thoughts are and what's going on and what to expect, and instead of just giving advice all the time, do this, don't do this, and so on, but just listening and being open to that. It's that kind of communication. It's so trite because you hear it all the time, open communication. Okay, that's been said, but it's a little harder to do unless you take the time to do it and make it a priority. I think that was one thing. And then just being around, getting involved in it. Go to the shows they're doing, and show up for the things they're involved in, and be excited about it. You probably will have a good time if you're not so worried. I used to go, mention it in the book, hang on the bar at the 9:30, the old 9:30 club, because if you weren't hanging on to something, and again, I was the oldest person in the room, if you weren't hanging on to something, it was dangerous. So I know a lot of bartenders because I've been, that's the safe spot. And, it just, I guess, look at it be a little more relaxed about it. There aren't a list of 5 things that are appropriate for a child to do. Law school, medical school, being an accountant. Thank God you didn't do that.
That was not in the cards.
I know. Be open to all those things that a creative child can come up with, and you'll have the best time of any parent in the world if you go with it. I think I've had a wonderful time. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. It's funny, the first time we did one of these things, I didn't know how should I begin our conversation, and I said, well, let me begin by saying, if it weren't for my mother, I wouldn't be here right now. And I didn't realize that's kind of funny. Okay. Liz.
Okay. Can I just say, I've brought my 11-year-old here tonight.
Oh, good.
And I can just hear it. Well, Dave Grohl's mom said...
Oh, God.
Uh-oh.
Please.
I can just hear it. It's going to happen.
Also, just so you know, my mother's never said a curse word in her entire
I
life.
can just hear it.
Ever. Not one. Not one. Ever. And she's got to deal with this shit every day of her life. So kids, try to keep it cool.
Yeah.
This is to both of you, but mostly Virginia. What does it mean to you that your son makes such a positive impact on people's lives with his music? It's from Jared in Baltimore. Woo! Jared.
That's wonderful to hear, because it's really incredible to me how, and it's one of the things we don't talk about a lot about the process and the music and so on, is the lyrics. All the mothers and I said that we'll think about it together, but we don't ask for a definition and a exact line by line analysis of what this means, because these songs and the experience of being there while you're singing them mean different things to different people, and they affect deeply. And that's exciting to see. And when I watch a show from the side of the stage, I have a little folding chair right there, and I have it there because I love to watch the audience. And I love to see that music translate and transfer and become excitement out there to all those people. And I know it's for 1,000 different reasons. And that's very meaningful. I don't know how you do that, but people interpret in deep ways and in different ways.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that here, that you asked that here, because growing up in this city, I was inspired by so many of the musicians in this city.
Right.
And the music that I listened to, whether it was Dante's band when I was young, or Ian Mackay's band when I was young, or Bob Mould, who's playing here later, by the way. I mean, they were the ones that inspired me to do what I do now, and also to start doing it myself and not wait around for anybody else to help. I think one of the things about this city is that people really decide, like, okay, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do it myself, and it's gonna work. Does that have anything to do with what we were talking about?
Probably not, but it's deep.
Thanks, Mom.
This is actually kind of a follow-up to that. Virginia, is there one of Dave's songs that means the most to you? Or tell us one of his songs that really means a lot to you.
Oh, here she goes again. Well, Arlandria just... it's going to get to me. Very much. I don't require that constant lyrical attention, but I do love that. And, I love the references to Virginia, because I do love it here, I gotta say.
Well, it's a funny thing. Most people always thought I was referring to the state, but now I think they're going to realize that I was referring to you
That's right.
in a lot of these songs.
Well, that's nice to know. But
I'm waiting for a second. Yeah. Is there any mom that you wanted to interview that you weren't able to?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
But I don't want to give the list of the people who turned me down. Yeah, there were some.
I will.
I did. One thing that I was disappointed by a little bit was that I wanted to have more women represented. Yeah, and they were harder to get to accept the idea. I think I know why, but both the artists and their mothers took 3-4 phone calls, and then they said no. But I think it's because, my theory is that women are not given the same fair shake often that men are when they're written about, and that they expect to have it be gossipy and about what they're wearing or their latest love story and so on, and not so much the other parts of the journey. And so there was some sensitivity there in some of the people I talked to. But I loved the women that I got. I'll tell you, meeting Miranda Lambert's mom was a great moment, and watching her perform turned me into a big fan. I mean, she is a rock star. I don't care what category she's in. She's something. So yeah.
And Dave, did you suggest moms for the book?
I don't really remember if we started. Were there any that I suggested?
No, but you told me a couple that you knew would turn me down because their stories were too sad. They didn't ever want to talk about it again. Yeah. So it was some of them selected themselves out, I think. But most of the mothers I talked to, had either never been interviewed before or maybe only once. And so but I wasn't threatening because I was one of them, so they let me come see. Yeah.
Someone else had a scotch here tonight.
I'm 13 and I'm a musician. When you were a kid, did you ever doubt that you'd be a rock star? Your friend, Jackson Anderson.
Oh.
P.S. Your mom rocks.
Thank you, Jackson.
Well, is that you? Yeah. What's up, buddy? It's funny, when I was a kid and I first started playing music, I loved listening to records, and I loved the Beatles, and I loved, like Rush and Kiss, and just like stuff that kids listen to, and I was learning to play guitar, but I never thought that I would be like a rock star. I just kind of liked playing guitar and stuff. And then when I started playing in bands and I heard what we sound like, I just kind of knew that I'd never be a fucking rock star. Because it didn't. But I just liked doing it, and everything else just kind of happened. And but I think that's the most important thing. The ones that really love to play just play no matter what happens.
Right.
You could have a 9-to-5 job and play when you get home from work, or you could be Paul McCartney, and that guy never wants to stop playing.
Oh.
Because he loves to do it. He still plays for the reason he started to in the first place.
Yeah.
So, it's pretty kick-ass being a rock star. But honestly, the best part is when you actually get to play. So that's, yeah.
This is for both of you. What was the best live show you've ever experienced? Or one live show that stood out for you?
Well, it was a very small one, and it was at the White House. And it was when Paul McCartney was given the Gershwin Award. And there were like 200 people in the audience or something. Mm-hmm. And he invited David, Stevie Wonder, Emmylou Harris, Faith Hill.
Elvis Costello was there.
Elvis Costello.
Nora was there too, that's right.
It was of course, an all-star group. And President Obama and his family. This is why this was so special. They were in the front row with Paul McCartney, and he would go back and forth from the stage to his seat. And David came out to play Band on the Run and was 3 feet away from the President of the United States.
It was like DC Space.
Paul McCartney, yeah. A little more dressed up.
Yeah.
And it was the most magical evening. It was just, Stevie Wonder and Paul McCartney played Ebony and Ivory, and everyone just dissolved in tears. It was magical, and it just got better and better. I hope that was one of your favorites.
Yeah.
Do you
that was a good one.
Yeah, that was
was pretty cool. But seeing the Bad Brains at the 9:30 Club,
Well, and then I think on the other end of that spectrum was being at Wembley on one of 2 nights with 80,000 people, and that was another full cry moment. I cry a lot. I can't help it.
Aww.
And well, I was overwhelmed. So yeah.
When you come back to DC, are there places that you have to visit? What are your must-dos in DC and Virginia?
Mario's Pizza.
It's usually about the food. We live, I stay in Springfield, Virginia.
Yeah, tell them all where we live, Mom. That's a great idea.
Exactly. Okay. And there's one restaurant, and I have to go there for a crab cake. And then I know life has begun again. I'm happy, yeah.
Right.
Honestly, Still, every time I drive over the bridge and see the Jefferson Memorial, I'm still overwhelmed. I can't help it. I just am so, I love this place. And I feel like it should be cherished and honored, and maybe soon again it will be. Let's find out. Yeah. That's another night, right? Yeah.
That's the second show.
Yeah.
Virginia, what was your scariest moment as the rock star mom so far? Was there ever a moment that you were just terrified?
Well, I wasn't there, but it's when he jumped off the stage and, broke his leg. And I had to see it replayed over and over and over again. And then he got back on the stage, and they held his leg together. Who does that? And he finished the show, and I thought so. That was, I wasn't there, as I said. He was in Sweden, I think, and I was home, and that was terrifying. Yeah. No more of that.
No, I never at all.
Stay away from that
promise.
stage edge.
Yeah.
Leading from that, how did you handle the stress of Dave being away from home for such a long time and you not knowing he was safe? My parents were quietly losing their minds when I was on tour. Thanks. How did you handle him being away at such a young age?
I flew to wherever they were.
There you go. There you go.
Or got on the tour bus.
She followed me.
I did. Well, no, he was really nice about saying, come on, come along. We're going to Australia. You've never been there. And I did, so I did. I went. And went to Japan with him. And I did some bus tours in England and Ireland. And yeah, he didn't get out of my sight for too long. So, and that was the thing. I kept saying, this must be wrong. I don't see any of the other mothers. And that's one of the reasons I decided to write the book, because they weren't there. And so I went to find them. And so that's what I did. I just found them.
Great. We'll take a couple more questions. To Virginia, what artist would you like to see Dave perform with that he hasn't yet?
Oh, my goodness. We used to talk about this, and boy, you've covered the list. We used to talk about it years ago when you were probably one of those 7 or 8 year old car conversations. I don't know. I used to say, "Oh, Paul McCartney, please. I want to meet Paul McCartney." I got to meet Paul McCartney. Right. Oh my goodness. I honestly. Is there anybody you still want to play with?
Last night I was at a dinner fundraiser thing to actually try to raise money to get more music programs in schools around the country. And these high school musicians came to perform for the maybe 30 people that were there, and they were so good that I just sat down and started jamming with them, and there it is. Like, that's the greatest thing that's ever happened. Like, I just sit down and jam with someone, and it's awesome, Or there's a Preservation Hall jazz band. They're like, come sit in and jam, and I think you have as much. I mean, of course, it's an honor to play with people that are legends and stuff, but it's sometimes just as satisfying playing with someone that you've never met. It's pretty fun. It's like shooting fish in a barrel in this place, man. It's so easy. Thank you, by the way.
Virginia, were there any stories that you wanted to tell that you couldn't put into the book? Can you give us an outtake? That was my question.
Yeah. There were some that about our trip to New York, our first trip to New York.
Right.
And when I was trying to get the kids to see New York, and I was making no money because I was a public school teacher. And so one year at Thomas Jefferson High School, something happened to the soccer coach. And we had a great winning girls soccer team. So they asked me if I would be this girls soccer coach, knowing that I knew nothing about coaching girls soccer. But what they really meant was, will you chaperone the college girl who knows everything about coaching, but we can't hire her because, So I said, okay, how much will you pay me? And they said, we'll pay you, I don't know, $3,000 or something, but it'll all come at one time. So I said, oh, okay, that's my ticket to New York. So we managed, it's a very long story, and it will be in a book at some point that somebody else will write. But I could have, that was quite an adventure. And it was the first time he had been to New York. And we did everything that you could possibly do in one weekend. We saw a Broadway show. We went to see the Statue of Liberty. I think you watched MTV for the first time. I think it was right then. It was just starting. And it was just one of those great weekends which we managed to make happen.
Yeah.
So that was great.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I didn't leave out. Well, it wasn't a biography by any means. I didn't tell the whole story. I didn't.
Yeah.
But I'm happy with it.
Me too.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to end on this question. It's for Dave. What's the most rock star thing your mom has ever done?
Well, she's had some pretty glorious moments. She's been on stage at festivals and stadiums and things like that. But I think the coolest rock star moment, maybe for you and for me, I don't know if you know what I'm going to say, but was once we had a dinner that was being hosted by Paul McCartney. And my mom walks in the room, and Paul jumps and grabs a bottle of champagne and pours her a champagne and then presents it to her. And I was like, that's some rock star shit. McCartney just handed you a glass of, That's pretty amazing.
That was a moment.
Yeah. But I tell you, I gotta be honest, to me, I mean, I don't really know what the definition of the term actually means, but in doing this promo tour with my mom, which is kind of funny, because she's been on promo tours with us before, just traveling around Europe as I have to do interviews. And as we go through every border, they check her because they think she's carrying the drugs for the band. She gets torn apart at every border as if she's a drug mule. But, you know, when we decided that we were going to do these kind of things together and we'd talk in front of audiences, the first one we did was in Los Angeles, and I was kind of a little nervous because I thought, God, I hope we can carry a conversation long enough. And I was afraid for you. I thought you were going to be really nervous.
Me too.
Well, this is the mother who taught public speaking for 35 years. And I remember when we sat down to begin the conversation, and I asked you a question, and then you addressed the crowd very eloquently, and it was a fully formed answer, perfectly articulate, with no ums or ahs or let me think. And I just thought, in that moment, I was like, oh, thank God, that's my mom. So every time we do one of these things, I think of her like, what a badass. You don't seem nervous at all.
Thank God that's your mom. Thank you very much, Virginia and Dave
Thank
Grohl.
you.
Thank you very much, you guys. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for the roars. Okay.